Hi, everybody. Welcome tonight. We are here with my special guest, Mrs. Kassi Ritch. We are filming it ahead of time just because it is a sensitive topic. I wanted to talk to her about her daughter, Leah. So this is a trigger warning. This is about infant loss. If you're having a hard time with that, you might not want to watch this episode, but that is a warning. But we're also going to be talking about her rainbow baby, who we might get to meet. I don't know. We'll see how things go. Most of you know Kassi. Most of you have followed the story of her on Facebook with her daughter, sweet little daughter, Leah. We've kind of been along for the journey, and now she is going to talk about it a little bit. So let's go ahead and hear her story. Okay, so let's start back at the beginning. So you were 13 weeks pregnant and you had a sonogram.
Correct. We went in for the sonogram at 13 weeks, routine sonogram. Second one, and after the sonogram was over, the sonogrammist didn't say a word to us and said the doctor will be in to talk to you. And we thought that was really weird, so we sat down and waited, and he came in and he went over the sonogram with us and just showed us different things on the sonogram and how it looked like the baby had what they call is mermaid syndrome. It looked like both of her legs were fused together at the hips and down. So it's just one trunk, and that he wanted to send us to a specialist. So we left there really confused, and you go home, you Google it all, and then you just go crazy. So we prayed about it, and I tried to just wait it out until we got to the next appointment, and we got to the next appointment and they confirmed what the doctor previously had told us, that both of her legs looked like they were formed together, and that most babies with this syndrome that they haven't seen many of either are they don't make it to term, they pass away in the womb, or they come out as a stillborn baby. And so after that, we went home with all of this information, all of the paperwork, and, we just kind of talked about it, because we both didn't really know what to say. And, it was just such shocking news. But we ended up packing up and moving, not because of her, but it was just time for us to move back to Florida. And we got home, and I got situated with a new OB, and had to be a high risk OB. So it was a hard transition for me. And I just kept thinking, like, what's going on with her now? Like, what does she look like now? And just really wanted to get in. And I finally got into a sonogram. It was about 23 weeks. And my husband couldn't come, but my mother-in-law came. And we got in there, and the lady they know nothing, because we just moved to them, and it was kind of actually nice not telling them anything about the baby prior to going, because this way it's like a second opinion type deal, and they know nothing about you, and they're just going off of what they see. So we got in there, and she was doing measurements and all these things, and the next thing I know, I see 2 feet, and I just lost it, and I was crying, and this lady probably thought, what in the world? Like, why is she crying? What's going on? And even though I'm sure she knew, that it was already a sensitive thing, but I'm crying and I'm telling my mother-in-law, like, do you see that? That is 2 feet. And, what mom, after having all, 4 other kids, is like super excited about 2 feet. But I was so excited to see 2 feet. And so she got done with the sonogram, and she said that the doctor would be in to see me and meet me and talk to me and schedule my next visit. And I said, okay, that's great. And I'm just crying, because I was just like, man, the Lord hears our prayers. And I had been praying that they were wrong. And, so he comes in and, introduces himself, and he says, I just wanted you to know that we've got some issues. And so I started telling them what they had told me in Arizona about, the mermaid syndrome. And he said, well, that's not technically true. He said, mermaid syndrome means that they don't have feet, 2 feet in a separation. He's like, she is separated. She does have 2 feet, but she had one regular leg on the left side, and on the right side, she just had her femur. So the top part of her leg and where your knee meets was where her foot was. So she was missing the bottom part of her leg. And let me just tell you that that was the most exciting news for me ever. And I'm thinking in my mind, like, okay, there's tons of people who don't have a second leg or, whatever. I was so just happy and excited. And then he said, but we have other problems. And I was, back down to the bottom. And he said that her head was measuring very big. The ventricles that are inside your brain that fluctuate your spinal fluid, they're supposed to come up and go down and come up and go down. And with hers, it was coming up and it was just building. The holes that help it go back down were completely closed. So her ventricles were very big. And at first he just said some babies, have big ventricles. Like he tried to be very positive about it. And he said, but we'll just have to watch it very carefully and we'll go from there. Okay. So that was 23 weeks. At 27 weeks, I went back in for another sonogram. And at this point, we also did an echo, which is a heartogram, I guess you would say. So they do everything of the heart, but they can see all kinds of things with that machine other than just the heart. And so they went in and did like a neuro scan of the brain. And so when they did that, they measured the ventricles in her brain and they were just off the chart. They were so big. And it basically showed you that, you're supposed to have four parts of your brain, or 2 parts of your brain with the brain stem. And it basically showed her whole entire brain just smushed up into the front of her head, and everything else was nothing but fluid. So they sent us to a specialist, a neurologist, a neurosurgeon. And my mother-in-law just had back surgery. She had a neurologist, but a neurosurgeon. And he said that when the baby was born, he would have to go in and put a shunt in her brain, and it would have a tubing that goes down through her stomach, and then she would be able to release it, with her bladder and whatnot, and that would release the fluid, causing the brain to come back and hopefully form correctly. I said, okay, at this point, we're just like, let's just get her here. Like, we just want her to come. We just want, her to be here. And so it was just like nerve-wracking. I mean, I think I cried for days on end, just terrified because, you just, it's the unknown. You're terrified of the unknown. What's going to happen, And so at 34 and a couple days, I can't tell you exactly how many days, I'm not sure, but my water broke. And we headed to the hospital, and I got to the hospital. They hook you up to all these machines to test for like stress test on the baby. Oh, speaking of baby, hold on just a second.
Baby's awake. We have had some time pass since little Leah went to heaven. So in that time, Kassi was able to conceive a healthy baby, and he was just born a little while ago. And just, and he's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, you gonna say hi?
Aww. Look at him.
This is little Benjamin. Yeah, hi.
Aww,
he actually has on a onesie, and it says, "Handpicked for Earth by my sister in heaven."
Aw, that's sweet.
So anyways, went in and I was hooked up to the monitors. Chad got real comfy on the couch, went back to sleep. You know how husbands are, they love the hospital.
Oh yeah.
And everything was good. They had scheduled me for a C-section to happen at like 7 a.m. because her head was so big. It was, excuse me. It was 52 in diameter. So just think of how big that is. Like his head is like 30 something. So, and this is a newborn.
Right.
So there was no way I was going to be able to have a natural birth. Plus she was breeched. And as she grew, her head got lodged in my rib cage.
Yeah.
So she could never move. And then it just wasn't going to happen. So they scheduled me. Oh, bless you. They scheduled me for a C-section at 7:00. And at midnight, they hooked me up to all the machines. Well, at 3:00 in the morning, they come in and they rip me from the bed because her heart rate started to plummet into like the 50s.
Oh, wow.
So she was in stress, lots of stress. And so they took me out of the bed. They woke up my husband. They took us right into the OR. And you know how like you think you're excited and you're ready for what's about to happen, but I just lost it. I was just hysterical and terrified, I guess would be the right word. So we get in there and, you know, they get started and it wasn't, I don't know, 2 minutes until I could feel everything. Because a spinal tap works from your belly button down. Well, she was in my rib cage. So it was basically like having somebody on top of your rib cage pushing as the other one is pulling.
Right.
And I did end up with 3 bruised ribs. Thankfully, it was just bruised and not cracked, but I could feel it all. And I was screaming. And my husband was terrified because we have had 2 other C-sections and we just talked through the whole thing. You know, we were just ready to see the baby and we were so excited. But this one, he was so confused. He didn't understand why I was screaming. He kept asking the anesthesiologist, and he's just like, well, it's only numb from this area down. And so finally, after about 15 or 20 minutes, they got her out. And my husband went over because he was sitting next to me, and I was like, get up, like go see her. I need to see her. She was not crying. She was not making any noise. So he got up and they let him walk around, and he did get to cut the cord, and they get her on a warmer, and I'm just like screaming, like, is she breathing? Like, I was just hysterical. And my husband came back and he was like, they've got her hooked up to an oxygen machine, and but she's pinking up and, you know, she's breathing. And he's just very calm, cool Chad. That's what they always tell him. Like, nothing bothers him. He doesn't freak out. Like, and I'm the opposite. So I guess it's really good that I have him. So I'm just like, well, what does she look like? Like, what's wrong? Like, were they right? You know, and he just kept telling me, like, she's perfect. She's fine. You know, I'm just like, what about her head? Like, what, you know, I mean, I was just so blown away. And he's just like, she's fine. And then they wrapped her up, put her in an incubator. They rolled her by me very slowly. And then they're like, Mom, she's going to be transferred. They transferred her to a children's hospital, Nemours Children's. And they said that if Dad wanted to go, he needed to go now, or he could drive himself over later. And I opted to go to recovery by myself. My mother-in-law was on her way up to the hospital. So I knew I had somebody, but I wanted somebody to go with her. So at the Nemours Children's Hospital, the nice thing is everything is done in your own private room. So she had her own private room. All of her procedures, other than anything that required anesthesia, was done in her room, and you could be in there with her. So my husband went right with her in the ambulance, and they got me finally from recovery back to my room. And the lady was telling me, you know, in a few hours, we'll take out your catheter and we'll get you up and moving. And I was just like, no, we can do it now.
Aww.
I was like, I'm ready now. Like, I think when, you know, stress and trauma like hits you, like you just become superwoman. Like, I know that sounds weird to say, but it's like, I wanted to be with my baby. I had carried this baby for almost 9 months. I had heard everything the doctor said. Like, I wanted to be there because in my mind, they kept telling me, you know, she may not live. So I wanted to be with my child. And I kept telling the nurse, listen, lady, like, take the catheter out. If you need me to go to the bathroom, I will go to the bathroom. Whatever you need me to do, whatever I can check off your list, let me know so I can get out of here. And she just laughed at me. She thought I was just like pulling her leg. So about 3 hours later, after I had to be in recovery, I think it was like 2 or 3 hours. Once they got me to my room, about 3 hours after that, they came in and did take out the catheter, and I just got up and I went and used the restroom, and I got my stuff. I got dressed, and I told her, I was like, I'm leaving. And she was like, you can't leave. I'm like, well, I want to go. Like, why can't I leave? You can't hold me here. And so the doctor came in and he made me a deal. He told me that I could leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. I needed to stay through the day so that they could monitor, make sure, my incision and everything was okay. And I could go in the morning. So I got on the phone with my husband, and he's like, they're not doing anything right now. They had intubated her because she was not breathing very well on her own. But other than that, she's just hanging out in the incubator. Like, you need to get okay with yourself, and I'll come pick you up in the morning. So 8 o'clock in the morning, I signed an AMA, which is a waiver stating that I'm leaving on my own free will and not because the doctors wanted me to. And we kept saying, like, well, if you wait 30 more minutes, the doctor will be out of surgery and he can write you a prescription for pain meds and all this stuff. And I was just like, no, thanks. Like, I'll be fine. And, when you're just, everything can cover, all the pain, and the excitement and the rush covers all the pain. So I probably was in pain, but at that moment, I just wanted to go. So I didn't wait. And I got over there, and I just remember the whole car ride. Like, I was just crying and nervous and shaking. And I didn't know what to expect because, the doctors had told me one thing and my husband told me another. He was like, she's perfect. There's nothing wrong. Like, and I don't think he did that in means to make me feel like she's completely a normal baby. I think he did that, just to help me cope or deal, So I don't know. I kind of had mixed emotions about it. So when I arrived at the hospital and I went into her room, and there she is laying in an open, like, incubator, didn't have the lid on it. She's just laying there open, and I lost it. So here's this beautiful baby and her head looked normal size, but she was so tiny. Everything else was tiny, but her head looked normal to me because I don't know. I have had big babies, so I just assumed this is a big baby. But she had a small body. And then, just the instance of seeing how her feet and her legs were, like, it can really just, it can get to you. So it took a while for me to adjust, but, the first thing I wanted to do was just hold my baby. And they let me. I sat in the chair and I just held her. And, just in that moment, it's just like you're just thanking God that she's here. And, I got here in time. That's what I kept telling myself. Like, I am here in time to hold my baby. Like, I was just so terrified that from the time I spent at the hospital to the time that she was gone, that something was going to happen. And I know that's awful to worry like that, but it's just, it's your instincts. You worry, you care, you want to know what's going on. And anyways, I just remember, so I'm holding this beautiful baby, this miracle baby, and the doctor walks in, and it's me, my husband, and my mother-in-law. And she starts talking to me about, doing some procedures. And she said, did you not know about the things that was wrong with your child? And I was like, yes, ma'am. Like, I found out at 13 weeks. And she said, and you still decided to have this baby? And mind you, I'm holding a breathing child. She's alive. I just, all the trauma. And this is what the lady said. And my husband very nicely asked her to please leave the room, and then told our nurse that we did not want her to ever come back to our room. We were just so blown away that instead of like a congratulations or here's our plan or This is what we think is going to be best for her. It was just, were you not told about your options? Like, I was so confused.
Yeah.
And it really does break your heart the more you think about it, because I'm sure there's lots of people who are told about their options and, put in that situation. You never know, it's sad. But anyway, so within 48 hours, she was down having her shunt surgery. And then within, I don't know, a week, she was having her trach put in. And I think between her trach, I think her trach was probably the hardest decision I had to make as a mom. So here's this baby, and she's breathing on it's like she had oxygen tube up her nose, so she was getting a lot of oxygen. And then at one time they had intubated her, so she needed help breathing. But I just kept thinking, like, well, she's doing fine. Like, leave that thing up her nose, we'll be fine. And they told us that after so long, they can only leave it in for so long because the oxygen starts to mess with other things inside of your body and could cause damage to other places farther along. So they said she really does need a tracheostomy. And I was like, no way. No way. I just couldn't wrap my mind around doing this to a 2-week-old baby. And that's the hardest thing as a mom, is you're making this decision for somebody else. It's not like I'm saying, sure, you can do it to me. It's I'm doing it to my baby. And they kept telling me, people go on trachs and then they come off of them. And, she's not going to be on it for the rest of her life. That's what they kept saying. And she can get off of it. You are just not wanting to sit still. And
I'm going to share some pictures while you're talking about her, if that's
okay. Yeah, that's fine. And so we made the decision and she got trached. She came back. And the nice thing about being trached is I could actually hold her. When she was intubated, I could only hold her for a little bit because every movement would pull on the tube. And if it fell out, then she had to go back into the OR. And
so
it was just,
did she even have anything here? Is this when she was first born? Correct.
That's when she was first born. Yeah. And it's like, you look at her sides of her head and it just looks like a normal head.
Right. Look at those fingers, perfect fingers.
And then this was after she had been trached. And so, yeah, once she was trached, we could actually I could hold her. I could walk around the room holding her. I just kind of had to push the vent around with me. But it just made it more for us to be able to bond more with her, having the trach, being able to sit there and hold her. I pretty much stayed at the hospital for 3.5 months straight. I think I went home twice. I went home for my son's, they did a hearing test. She failed. But I went home for my son's birthday, all of my son's birthdays, because they're July and August. That was the only time I had really left the hospital, because I was just terrified I was going to go home and they were going to call me to say, we got to take her into surgery. So I pretty much stayed there. And what's next? So we've done the shunt surgery, we've done the trach surgery, and then they come in. That was 2 days after she was born. So she just had the little oxygen up her nose.
See that, yeah.
And then they come in to tell me that the blood flow to her foot was not doing well, and her foot started turning like purple. And it was very positional. So they would actually like bend her leg up and tuck it in the side of her diaper. So it kind of all held it together. And if it was like that, it was perfect. The foot was pink, her leg was pink, all was good. But the moment you undid the diaper, like to change her, and her foot came down, it turned purple and there wasn't really good pulse to it. So here was another decision we were stuck with, was what to do. And I just remember telling myself, like, I just keep taking everything away from her. Like, I was really distraught about it. It was just really hard and, decision wise, but they just kept, telling us that it's for the best. It'll be better for her. She won't be in any pain, like, and that was my thing as a mom, like, you don't want your children to be in constant pain. And I didn't want her living on, morphine for who knows how long, just because she was in so much pain. And she couldn't tell you whether she cried or not. You couldn't hear her because she was trached and goes right through your windpipes. So I'd never heard her cry. So anyways, after about a month, her head had shrunk back to normal size and everything looked great. And then it was like, how they say you go 2 steps forward to go 10 steps backwards. Right. So everything was doing so well, and we were so excited, and we were getting nurses down for the house, equipment. We were just working on our classes you had to learn how to do, compressions and give air with a trach. So you had to take all these classes, and next thing you know, her head, they would measure her head every night or every early morning. And it just started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they couldn't figure out why. So guess she went back down to open her head up and do surgery again, to come out to find out that she just had so much fluid in there that it was clogging the shunt that they put in. So they came out to tell us that the shunt wasn't going to work, and the only thing that we could do was called an external shunt, which is where they put it in the side of your head, and it has a little tube on the outside that drains into a bag. Right. But because of having this in, she cannot be moved. She had to lay at like a certain degree, and all these things. And I was just like, no way. Right. I mean, I just want to hold my baby. I couldn't grasp the fact that now now I was just going to sit here and watch her. And I was just it tore me apart. So, but that was the only thing they could do, because it got to the point to where it was just stretching her head so bad you could see all her veins, and you knew she was in pain. So they did the external shunt. Tell us about it. Let me get your pacifier. Hold
on. We knew we probably have some kids popping in and out, but that's okay. There's some really cute pictures on here of the family that I love. I'll go ahead and share them with you.
Find a pacifier.
Oh, never.
Yeah. So anyways, they did the external shunt, and within like 4 days, her head was back to normal, and her bag on the side of the bed, it's kind of like a catheter bag. It was just completely full of spinal fluid. Like, it's one of those things that you don't really understand how much fluid's in there until you see it. And so I would just see the bag get completely full, and they would change it, and completely full, and they would change it. And it was just really mind blowing. And so we had the neurosurgeon come in, and he basically told us that there was, after almost 3 months, that there was nothing that they could do. The best thing to do would be to pack her up, get all her stuff home, take her home, and then in every 7 days, bring her into the doctor's office, let them stick the needle in, drain it out for a few hours, take her back home. And I mean, that was very hard to grasp. Like, this is going to be my life every 7 days, like going to the hospital and coming back, and there's nothing that they could do for her. I mean, we called around to every hospital that you could think of. I had the doctors there. We did FaceTime with doctors in rooms with all of her scans. I mean, they went far and beyond anything I ever thought that they could, hospitals did for her, calling people, contacting people, bringing people in to see her. Like, they did it all. They did hearing tests, and she did fail them. But I'll tell you what, every time we'd come in the room, or a new person would come in the room, her eyes would just like try to find that person. And, maybe she could just hear vibrations or muffles or whatever, I don't know. they told us from scans that she would be blind, but if you moved into the light or a shadow, she found you, you know. So I definitely don't think she was completely blind or deaf either way, but just not good enough to where she could pass those tests. So anyways, we got all the equipment home. We tore our whole entire living room apart, because at the beginning of finding out, I'm just thinking, oh, well, she'll just need a crib and, a couple of medical things. No, she needed it all. We had oxygen tanks like lined up on the wall. We had a vent. We just had everything you could possibly think of. She couldn't have a regular bath. So it was like you had to have extra things. And so we basically tore my living room apart. We got rid of the living room. We moved school desks to the other side of the living room and gave her her own little section right here outside of our door, our bedroom door, so that we could hear her. But she also had, we had to come home with a full-time 24/7 nurse. It wasn't an option at the time. It was recommended, or not recommended. It had to happen. So we came home with a nurse, but we still wanted the baby right outside of our room just so that we could hear everything. You could hear the monitors, everything that was going on. I still didn't sleep. I was up. I was so used to at the hospital getting up, putting her food in her feed. She had another surgery and she got a GI tube into her belly where she could get her, she was on donor's milk. And so she got her milk through her belly for every feeding. So I just got so used to doing it all at the hospital that I was like, oh, I'll be fine at home. I can do it all at home. Well, I didn't have the other 4 children while I was at the hospital. So throwing that into the mix kind of just, it was a lot. Now, granted, the kids were wonderful. When she came home, they were just, they were beside themselves. They only got to come up to the hospital a few times, but it wasn't until, so her first 3 months that we spent at the hospital, nobody saw her besides me, my husband, and my mother-in-law and adults. Then we came home, and one night we got woke up from sleep by the hospice nurse telling us that our stats were dropping really bad. And this hospice nurse was not our normal nurse. She usually takes care of elderly patients, and they usually have DNRs. And so she just knocked on our door, like nothing was, bothering her, but she said, the baby stats are really low. They're staying really low. They're not coming back up. Do you want me to give her some more oxygen? Like, do you want me? Of course I want you to. So I just came out and I started doing it all myself. We had been taught how to turn the oxygen up. We've been taught how to turn the machine up. Like, I just kind of, got in there and did my own thing. Well, her stats just kept dropping. They went from like 89s to the 70s, and then she started turning gray. And at that moment, it's just like, mom overdrive just kicks in. And I was inside the crib doing CPR on a 3.5-month-old baby. And it's just like, my mind, I say I can remember the night, but I can't. The only thing I can remember is her face, because she just kept turning gray and purple. And my husband's on the phone with EMS. And I remember they got here and they kept just telling me, like, ma'am, we'll take over. And I was just like, my husband said, I said, no, like, I got it. I'm doing great. She's coming up. And they had to take me out of the crib, put me in my bedroom, and my husband had to hold the door shut so that they could take care of her. They got her in the ambulance and they took her back to the hospital. Well, once you go back to the hospital, you don't get to go to the NICU anymore because you're not a clean baby. Now you're dirty because you came out into the world or whatever. So we stayed back at the hospital for a couple weeks. Well, because we weren't in the NICU, the kids were allowed to come up. So they came up and we stayed at a Ronald McDonald House, which the hospital helps provide for. And you could just walk back and forth. And it was really nice because I could spend time with the children. The children could come visit her. When it got to be too much, we could just go back to the room. So it was nice. We did that for 2 weeks, and then everything looked good, and we came back home. We came back home on November 1st, and November 8th was my daughter's birthday. And by the time we got to like the 4th or 5th, we needed to go back into the doctor to get her head drained again. And it hadn't even been a week. It hadn't been 7 days. So we knew that things are starting to pick up. Like instead of 7 days, now we're at 5 days. So we got it drained on the 5th. We had Madeline a little birthday party here at the house because, you know, you can't really go and do much. And I just knew in my heart, like, we're going to have this, like, I kept telling all of our family, like, please come to this birthday party. Like, just come see the baby, you know, like, and we even had to like forewarn, I've got, my sister-in-law has little kids, and just to tell them that, you know, like she was just starting to, her head was just really big and heavy, and she was starting to fill up and her veins were popping out. Like, you know, you just want to kind of warn people that, you know, sometimes it's hard for other people or children to see, you know, babies look like that.
Right.
My kids, it didn't bother them at all. They were just, we don't care how different our sister is. We love her. I remember my son, Levi, he's about to be 6, but he kept telling us, he was like, Mom, she's special, but she's going to have her a robot leg. That's going to be cool. I just remember him telling us, like, and it's just so genuine. Like, kids just have that genuine, like, love. They don't hate nobody. They don't pick people apart. Like, they just truly love people, and especially babies. Like, they were just fighting over who could hold her all the time, even though they would say, Mom, can we have a pillow for our arm because her head's really heavy? But they would just sit in this little pink chair right here with a pillow, and they would sit there all day and hold her and rotate. And it was so sweet. In the mornings, Andrew would crawl in her crib with her and just talk to her. And so we had our birthday party on the 9th for Madeline. And on the 12th, she started getting really bad. Her stats would drop really bad. This sounds awful. It just looked like her head was going to just, it couldn't stretch anymore. Like, it was so bad. And, you know, we didn't have an appointment for another couple more days. So I just finally called the doctor who had been taking care of her, who had gone far, you know, and beyond with her. And I called her and talked to her, and she basically just kind of told me, like, the signs that you're telling me and what you're explaining to me, you know, it's going to just be a couple of days. And she said, you know, do you want me to come? I don't work, you know, this day, and this day, and I'll just come get a hotel, and I will come spend all the day with you if you need me or whatever. And so we decided that on November 13th, we had all of our close family come over, and the doctor showed up as well as the hospice nurse. And they kept saying, like, you know, we're maxed out on morphine. We can't give her any more morphine. And you could just tell she was in so much pain. Anytime you picked her up, she would cringe because the fluid in her head would just, the movement, you know, everything just hurt her. And then she'd stop breathing. You could tell she hurt because she would like clam up and stop breathing and then come back to. So we all sat around and we went to the Lord in prayer, and we basically just said, you know, like, we're so thankful for all the time that we have gotten to spend with her, but we don't want her to be in any more pain. And what should we do? And we talked as a family, and we thought it'd be best to just let her be peaceful, you know, instead of just having her in so much pain all the time. And so the doctor came on that morning on the 13th, and she basically told us, you know, what they always tell you, like, we're going to pull the plug, we're going to pull the vent, and it'll be very fast. That's what they said. And that's how they told us with everything. When they went from the trach or the cannula to the trach, it'll be very fast, and then she'll be back to breathing. And she would always like outshine. She'd last for hours before, you know, something crazy would happen. And So she came and they pulled her off the trach, and, we all just sat around and held her and sang, and they pulled her off at 9 o'clock. And at 7:30 that night, she passed away.
Wow.
So she went almost the whole day. It was just like, it kind of just, it was, I don't know, it kind of just helped you feel that, she was just strong. She wanted to prove to everybody she was just so strong. But the moment, I'm telling you, of course, mom was the last one to hold her. I was the last one. I shared, I shared my baby. Usually I get told I'm the baby hog because I just want to hold them all the time and never pass them off. But I did. I shared, and I got to hold her at the very end when she passed. And it was like, it's just a miracle. She went from veins popping out her head and red and blue and purple to just normal color. And it was like, you just knew all the pain was gone. It was really hard. That's when it all just kind of like, it set in, and it was, like, I'm not going to be feeding her in a couple hours, or I'm not going to be waking up in the middle of the night, which I still did for many nights, many weeks. It was like I would hear the alarm in my head, just constant. And I would just get up and go to the kitchen to get her milk, and then just realize that she wasn't there. So she passed away, and they came and they took her, and it was just like, I don't know, you just go from like, this is my life, to now my life has changed again. Like, we already had a huge change in our life, and we were dealing with it and figuring out our new normal. And now that new normal has changed again, and it was really hard. And of course, funeral homes, they want to have the funeral like 2 days after somebody passes. So that was even worse, because it's like you don't even get time to grieve as yourself or for your family before you're in a funeral home, having a funeral. So the funeral was really hard. And then after the funeral, I kind of just shut everybody out. Like, I was just there, just kind of like in the moment, like just straight faced. Everything was fine. I think that was like my favorite word. I'm fine. Quit asking me. I'm fine. Mom's fine, and I wasn't fine at all. Obviously I'm still not fine, but
I'll never get over it.
No. But it was just one of those things. And you always, while I was in the hospital, just sitting there by myself, like, the why question is the question that just runs through your head. Why me, Lord? What did I do? Why do I, why is this happening to me? Why my baby? I mean, the why, it will drive you insane, and I don't want to say that I ever like was mad or resented God or was angry. I was angry for sure, but I never was like, oh, forget about him. Like, I just knew that, I just kept telling myself, like, there's a plan. Like, what was the plan? What was the reason? Instead of why, now I'm going to what? Like, what was the reason for her to be here? And I just kept telling myself, like, there was a purpose. Like, there was a purpose that she was here. And sure enough, there was, because I'll tell you what, it does open your eyes, like I said, to the children, because, people are so mean these days, and the world is just awful, and just even family members. I mean, people can just be so mean in the things that they say. And then you look at your children, and they're just, it's like it takes a lot to get a child to say something very ugly, and so for me, I just kept thinking to myself, like, she did have a purpose. Her purpose was to, to try and show everybody, like, that you can love anybody or anything, or, you know, like there's a reason, you know. I don't know. And you know, the couple of the verses that really hit me were, you know, when you first get saved, you try to learn like what is it, Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, you know, trust in the Lord with all thy heart. And I kept like that kept just coming back to me while I would sit in the hospital, like, you know, because I kept saying, why? And it was just like, you know, lean not unto, you know, your own understandings. And it was just like, I have to just quit thinking that I can do it all, you know, like, you know, in all thy ways acknowledge him, like, and he shall direct the path. And I just kept thinking, like, you know, this is a passage that we just, you know, we just say it all the time. And
Right.
it's like in that moment, like,
Mhm.
I really needed to break it down and really realize what it meant, you know, like, and so I think that, you know, trying to get into scripture, I would talk with my father-in-law, and he's wonderful about, he is just like, you quote a verse, he can tell you where it's at. Like, he is just Bible knowledge. Like, and he just would tell me, he's like, well, remember Job, you know, he like, that's what I felt like. I felt like I was just living in Job's book, like in his just era where everything that got thrown at him was, you know, the next thing. And that was Leah. Just everything was a bump in the road. And, you know, but look how he came out, you know, and it's just, you know, I don't think I'm ever going to not her or not feel for her or, you know, think about her or anything like that, or wonder what our life would be like, you know. Now I was terrified, like, if, you know, this whole COVID thing and, you know, not being able to get into doctor's appointments or whatever the case may be, like, it would have been awful. Like, I don't know. I think sometimes that it's just like, you know, God, you know, God does have his plan, and he knew, you know, he knows before it even opens or it even happens, he knows the outcome. And I think he just, you know, he knew that it was her time, and, you know, she got to spend time with her family, and,
She did.
you
I
know,
think you
so,
guys were the most perfect family that she could have ended up with. And I think that's why God gave her to you, because he knew you were the type of mom that she needed. He knew your kids were the type of siblings that she needed, and how much love in just her short amount of time that she was here, how much love you guys just like lavished on her. I mean, you said she, you know, the kids held her the whole day. So,
yeah,
I
they
mean,
could just sit in the chair and hold her. And my kids don't just sit.
yeah. See, and God knew that that was the type of family she needed. So even though she was only here a few months, I mean, she was loved by so many people, you
Yeah,
know.
and that's the crazy thing is, I mean, the outpour of love and emails, text messages, phone calls, letters, all kinds of things from people that, you know, you say you're Facebook friends, but I only know them through a screen. You
Right.
know, I've never physically met them or anything, but to know that, you know, it touched their heart enough to for them to be praying for us, and like that truly means, you know, it meant so much to us. And you know, I think that got me through a lot too, is knowing that um even though I thought I was like at my low and life couldn't get any worse or whatever, that there was always somebody out there just praying for us, you know.
Hmm. I know. And I think you guys were just a huge testament to those on the outside, like myself, looking in. And if I was ever tempted to complain about my day and just thinking of how it pales, you know, to what you're going through at the time, and then that would just encourage me to pray even more for you guys, because I know you needed it. And I want to thank you for being a good testimony. And you know, we all have those questions. We all have those why, you know, why did you do this? Why? But like you said, the Bible came to life for you, and those verses meant so much more, you know,
Right.
as you were going through it. And I really truly believe that God does give us the grace to go through it, because I look at your story and I'm thinking, I wouldn't have even handled it as well as you did. Like, I'm thinking, how could I go through that? How could I handle that? How could I ever lose one of my children like you did? But, and you probably thought that at one time too, but then you just do it. You have to get through it. God gives you the grace, at the time that you need it. So I think you've been an amazing testament. But for those, I was obviously there after Leah was, after she went to heaven. You really struggled with a lot of doubts about even having another baby.
Yes. I think it was just more like just all the what ifs, is it going to happen again? Will I make it through another? Like, if it did happen again, would I physically and mentally make it through doing that again? Going through the whole process again? Will I be able to care for this baby like I should, because it's just a very sensitive thing, like every time you think of holding a baby, you just think of holding Leah. So I think I was just really nervous, really scared, like, do I want to go through all that again? And the Lord decided I did. So I actually got pregnant a few months before I got pregnant with him, and ended up having a miscarriage. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was beside myself. I cried for days, and I just was not sure that this was what at the time, what I needed. Like, I didn't see how having another baby was what I needed, because I was still mourning my loss of my daughter. And when I finally came to the realization that, God doesn't do anything by accident, and that maybe this child would actually help me cope, and not by putting Leah on the back burner, but by helping me move forward. And by the time I finally got my mind right, I actually ended up having a miscarriage. And then I was back to distraught again. Like, why? And I talked to my husband, and I just told him, like, maybe Leah was the end cap. We're not supposed to have any more children. Like, it's just a lot. Like, my body physically was just a wreck.
Right.
I wasn't taking care of myself because, I had gone through so much that it's just like you always put yourself on the back burner. And I just kept saying, like, I need to work on getting myself healthier, and I need to be around for all my babies. So, let's, maybe just right now isn't our time. And then sure enough, a couple months later, I found out I was pregnant. And that's how it always works, right? Like, when you're trying and trying for a baby, you don't ever have that baby. But the moment you quit trying, there comes the baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I found out I was pregnant, and I just told Chet, I was like, well, I guess God thought differently. I guess God thought that, I do need to get healthier, but at the same time that I do need and deserve and, long for another baby.
Right.
And then, hopefully this will help me. Well, Benjamin here had me just all in, I was stressed out the whole time, just wondering. Every appointment I'd go to, I'd drag my mother-in-law with me, like, you have to come, because what if, you have to come, because what if they tell me this, or what if they tell me that, or, I was just so worried about everything. And I think up until about like 25, 26 weeks, I was just terrified. And then at 25 and 26 weeks, I'm used to having early babies, that I just was like, okay, when are you coming? When are we going to have our 2-month stay at the hospital? Like, I've had 2 other previous that we spent 2-3 months in the hospital. They came at 25 and 27 weeks. And so I was just ready for this baby. And I just would keep going to doctor's appointments, and they would just tell me everything looks great. And along I would just go. And, I started to just really, those fears and the sadness and the worrying just kind of started to go away, because I kept hearing, like, he's great. He's, perfect. Like, he's measuring great and nothing's wrong. Like, and, after a while of hearing that, and that's what it was with Leah, after hearing that so many times that everything was wrong, it was just like, your mind just goes, and it's just like, yeah, I know. Like, I don't even want to go to appointments because I know what they're going to say. And then with him, it was the same, but it was just the opposite. Everything's normal. Everything's fine. He looks great. And I kept telling my husband, I was like, when he comes out, something's going to be wrong. Like, they're telling me everything's perfect. And then it's just going to be something. And I made it to 36 weeks, and I went in for my 36 weeks appointment. And I always carry a lot of amniotic fluid, and I swell up like a whale. But I went in, and they told me that my fluid was super high and that he was so low. Like, the doctor kept telling me, when your water breaks, I don't even know if you'll make it here to me or not, because he is so low. And I would laugh about it because I've always been told I could never have a home birth because of my diabetes. I could never have a home birth, and I was high risk and all these things. And I said, okay, well, the closest hospital from us is like 15 minutes. So it's not even far. But I remember I woke up at like 2:00 that morning, May 4th, and I woke up in just like awful pain, and use the restroom, get back in the bed, and it was 4:00, and it's just like it just kept going on and on. And then at 5:00, I woke up, and I mean, just think of taking 5-gallon buckets and just pouring them all over your bathroom floor. It was so much fluid.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I told my husband, I was like, all right, get the bag, put it in the car. I'm going to get dressed. And the moment I said I'm going to get dressed, like, I dropped to the floor, and I was like, forget that. Call your dad. So I'm on the phone with my father-in-law, and he lives 12 minutes from my house. So it took him about 15 minutes to get here, getting up, being woke up at 5:00 in the morning. I went from the floor to one contraction to my husband telling me we can't deliver a baby on the floor. He's like, I can't get in there, to him helping me get in the bed, having 911 on the phone. And the next thing you know, the baby's crowning, and with one push, out he came.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So 911's on the phone, and they're like asking, how old's your wife? Is she conscious? And I'm in the background. We have the whole recording because it's public record. You can get it.
So cool.
So I'm in the background screaming, and she's like, is your wife conscious? I'm like, now looking back at it, I'm like, really? Like, did you not hear me screaming in the background? But she would tell him, like, she told him all the things to do that he did the complete opposite. She was like, laying flat on the back probably isn't the best. And I'm just like flat on my back in the bed. And she was like, and she's trying to talk to him, and he's just like, the baby's out, like, the baby's out. And he kept telling her, he's like, this is my first baby. I've seen it all happen. He's like, but I've never physically delivered my baby. And she was like, well, keep the baby, down below, and even with the knees or whatever. And I've already got the baby in my arms, like holding him, and, so it was just like, it was a wonderful, like, I'm talking 15 minutes. Like, it was 15 minutes of pain because he was so low and it came so fast. So yes, it hurt very bad. And I ended up waking up the children because my boy's bedroom was on the opposite side of my bathroom, and I was just screaming in the bathroom. So I woke up one, who woke up the next one, and they all just came and sat outside of our door until my father-in-law got there. And then they all came in. He said when my father-in-law walked in, he said he heard a baby crying. And so he gathered up all the kids, and he came in, and they all got to get in the bed and see the baby. And then 911 was here. And anytime you have a home birth unassisted, you have to go to the hospital, which was a great thing for me because I actually ended up hemorrhaging, however you say that. What I thought was still fluid, because I had so much fluid coming out, was actually blood. Oh. And so they got me to the hospital, and they do everything. They smash on you. They basically hurt you worse than having a baby, trying to get you to stop bleeding. And it wasn't happening. And they told me at first they thought my bladder ripped because the placenta had stuck to my bladder. because once all your fluid comes out, it has to find a home. And
Oh,
if you don't push it with like pretty close to after having the baby, it sticks to something.
oh,
And so I did, push out the placenta eventually, but it was a hard thing to do. And so they had catheterized me and they saw blood in there and they kept saying like I must have ripped my bladder. So they took me into surgery, and what was supposed to be a 20-minute surgery to fix my bladder, and found out that that wasn't the issue. There was all kinds of other issues, and it was just like blood everywhere. I ended up losing 8 bags. So if you look at the bags of like fluid you get, I lost 8 of those of blood until they could get me all stitched up and into recovery. So my body was a mess. I ended up having to get back that blood. So I swelled up like a balloon, and I got back 2 or 3 bags of platelets and frozen plasma. So I was just swollen and miserable for the next couple days. But Benjamin was here and he was healthy, and he did spend about 10 days in the NICU just because he was 36-ish weeks. So he was just a tad early. But he was fine. His biggest issue was just having to learn to eat, because they takes them a while to learn to eat. And I was not able to. I pumped and pumped and pumped and pumped and pumped. And because they kept saying like your body went through so much trauma, it may take longer. That's what they kept telling me. It may take longer. So don't give up. It may take longer. So we signed him up for the milk bank and did donor's milk while we were in the NICU. And I continued to pump every 3 hours and round the clock, and nothing and nothing. And I tried all the medicine that they had me to do, all the cookies, all the teas. I did it all, and it just never came in. And we left the hospital, and we are on a donor's milk program. So he gets 600 ounces frozen every 2 to 3 weeks that we just go pick up. And it's for a whole year. So once he gets to 1, then he can move on to whatever else we decide to do. But they will do it for a year, and it's the same one person. So it's really nice. You don't have to feel like you're going to different people and having to look through and see what they've had, like medical wise, or if they're a great eater or whatnot. And the lady that actually pumps for us is she's a NICU nurse at a different hospital local. So that was really cool. I've got to meet her. But he's a great baby. He's super calm and quiet. And I think that, I praise the Lord and give him like all the praises, because I just think that he knew that I just needed this super calm, super quiet, super easy baby, like right now in my life right now. Like that's just what I needed. So, and here he is. And as you can see, he is out. But
he's so beautiful. I didn't even ask you about all your feeding stuff after you went through everything. I should have asked, because I know when I was having problems with Hannah, you were a huge encouragement, because you were like, this with
I was
fine. And
I was determined. I was determined to feed this baby. Like, as a mom, like I feel like that's your job, like that's your bond. That's what you're supposed to do. Like God created us to be able to take care of our own children. And so I was just determined. Like I had so many people tell me like, you're pumping still at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're getting like drops and you're still doing it. And I'm like, yes, I am. Like I'm determined. And I did at one time, I got up to 1 ounce out of both at the same time, but 1 ounce is not going to feed this child.
Poor thing.
And it was wearing on me. I was getting just tired and frustrated. And it was just like, like they say, like, my joy wasn't there. Like I wasn't enjoying doing it because I knew I'd be feeding my baby. I was doing it and then putting whatever I got into a bottle of donor's milk and giving him still the milk. And then we even went and got he was tongue tied. So we even took him to the pediatric dentist and got it clipped. And he would latch, but he did not want to eat because he's so used to the bottle. And then plus I didn't have much, so he really had to work at it. And so he would scream, and I had to just get victory over the fact that it was not going to happen.
Yeah.
And after a couple nights of just listening to him scream all night, because I knew he was hungry and it wasn't working and I was tired, that I finally just was like, you know what, like, there's no shame, no shame at all. We got to do what we have to do. And he's still getting fed, and I'm sleeping, and I'm doing a lot better. So, so I don't want to say give up or gave up, but I just quit. So.
Yeah. No, you have to for mentally. And I've always said a fed baby is the best baby. So fed baby is the best. And he is thriving. He is such a chunky little monkey. I love it.
He is.
I love it. So
he has all the hair.
I know, I love it. If he was a girl,
it just like has its own, you could just wet it and let it dry. It has its own little do to it. It goes to the one side, and
it's so cute. You make the cutest babies. My husband just thought your kids were just the cutest things when he saw them.
Well,
I told
my
you,
son, my son was so distraught that when we went to church on Wednesday night, that little Tommy was not there anymore. He said, "My friend Tommy is not here, Mommy."
Well, I'm sure you'll be seeing more of Tommy here in the next few months. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, little kids really like him. So I am so happy for you. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. It's been a little over an hour. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I hope that helps someone. I know you have been a blessing to me all these years that I've known you. And I think that your story and Leah's story was a huge testament to just God's grace and getting through the tough times. I know I do have some listeners that have had infant loss. Maybe they are faced with news that isn't desirable. From you and your husband's point of view, there was never, and this would be mine too, when you found out there was problems, there was never a choice of we're going forward with this pregnancy. It was always, you knew that she was a gift, and whatever happened. So what would be your biggest piece of advice to maybe women right now that have found out some devastating news?
So what I look at now, and I wish I had, was more knowledge. Getting into, I actually got into Facebook groups with other moms who had hydrocephalus. That's what it was that she was diagnosed with. And just learning from them, because they're way better than Google. Taking it day by day, and not trying to look at the bigger picture of everything, not trying to assume or think what's going to happen, or what your life's going to be like. Like, just go day by day and ask questions. You need to have you got to have a good close couple friends that you can just cry and ask questions and know that they're not going to judge you either way. So that's what really got us through, was just being able to, because sometimes it's hard just to sit down and talk to your husband and just cry all the time, and that's what I felt like I did. My husband is not a crier. So I felt like all I did was cry, and all he did was just tell me, like, it'll be okay. And, after a while of hearing that, it's like, okay, I need to hear something else, so I would just reach out to a friend and I could cry to them, and then they could, just help me, talk to me a different way, or tell me that, it's okay for me to vent to them, or it's okay to let it all out, or take 5 minutes to yourself, even if it's in your bathroom or in your room with your door shut, or during your day, because your life does get busy and you do feel that you put it on a back burner. But if you just take that time, because there's so many things that I see throughout the day, or when we go places that remind me of her, that it's like, I just want to cry. So what do I do when I get home, or when I get not around people? I'll just go cry. I'll cry it out, and then I feel so much better. So just really, like, just letting it out and having a close knit family or friends to talk to. And then also just, really dive into God's word, because at first I didn't. I kind of just put it on the side, and I was all concerned about her. But there's so many verses in the Bible that just help bring you peace and comfort. And, it's just his words like a medicine. I mean, it does it all, it heals you. And one of the biggest ones that really got me was what is Psalms 29:11. It says, the Lord will give strength unto his people, the Lord will bless his people with peace. So just knowing that, no matter what it is, like, just give it to God. I think that is like the biggest thing. And my family doesn't quite understand that. My mother and father, and they never understood how I could just get peace over something. Of course it's still emotional, but I do have peace over it. And you try to explain it to them, and they're unsaved and they don't want to hear it. They just get mad. And so it is what it is with them. It's very sad, it's to that point. But finding peace and knowing you have peace, with your salvation, and knowing that, I'm going to see her again, and that she is going to be in a brand new body, and she is not in any pain. And, like, those things to me, like, even though it may be years, or who knows, maybe sooner than we think, but, like, just knowing that she's in heaven with, our other loved ones who've gone on before us, like, just knowing that brings that peace, that hope. It's just, it helps a lot. So digging into God's word on top of everything else.
Awesome. What great advice. I loved all of it. I'm not even going to add anything to it. You did amazing. So I enjoyed this talk so much. If you guys have any other questions, or you just want to tell her that, you appreciate her sharing the story, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'm sure everyone was blessed by this. So see, you made it through. You did so good. You did
just cried a little bit.
Okay, that's okay. It's okay to cry. Well, yeah, you'll always miss her, but like you said, we have the joy of heaven to look forward to. So that's what gets me going through when I really miss the people that I have lost that were close to me. So go ahead and hang on. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream, and I'll talk to you for a second. So thank you for coming on, and bye everyone.